Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
It's Brad and John. Here we are. Okay, let me...
Brad, you don't feel like I'm being too hard on you, do you?
No. See, John...
Okay, good. I don't want you to think I'm beating up on you at all.
Brad, no.
Because if it sounds that way, I don't want you... I care too much about you as a friend to make you think that I'm just beating up on you.
No, once again, let me go back and say, once again, Mike Carter wants to spend his money on 97.1. I'm glad he's buying radio. Once again, I'm just saying, hey, look at me, and anyway, let's move on from that. Okay, two things before we get into the Jane Puszcar, Peggy Hubbard thing.
Yeah.
I saw this on Channel 5 the other day, on their website. And the trial is going on in St. Louis for the guy who sped. Remember the horrible story happened last year of the young lady who's got her legs cut off. She was in town for a volleyball championship.
Yes.
Have you seen this video of her testifying in court?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, my God. I have to tell you, I feel so sorry for this young lady. I mean, she's 18 now, so she's not really a girl. I guess you'd call her a young woman, young lady, whatever you want to call her. I guess as an old guy, if I call her a young lady, it sounds you're an old dude if you call her a young lady.
Yeah.
What do you call someone who's 18 now? Do you call them a young woman? Do you call them
young lady?
Young lady. Okay.
Well, first, Brad, you ask their pronouns, and then you figure out what they want to be called, and then you call them that.
They bring her into court in a wheelchair, okay? And I'm thinking to myself, there's an attorney who's going to, whatever the decision on this jury is going to be, they're going to fight this because of the fact they bring her into court and the one leg is gone at the knee. The other leg has a little bit of the thigh and it's very mangled. Oh. It's you look at her. The minute I saw this video, I thought to myself, oh my God, I feel so sorry for this young lady. And they can't put her in the witness stand because she's in a wheelchair. She has, once again, it's interesting because I thought to myself, okay, there's an ADA issue right there. Most of the witness stand, you got to get up in a little box and sit in this little box. You can't get up there because it's like usually you have to walk up a couple steps. And she tells the story. I'm going like, I couldn't watch it anymore. I turned it off. I'm going like, it was
that powerful.
Oh my God. And I'm thinking to myself, and the interesting part of it is that she comes out, when she first comes out, she's like, and she's got a smile on her face. And I'm thinking to myself, man, she's a better person than I, because if that happened to me at 18 years old, I think I would be bitter for the rest of my life. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Yeah.
Anyway, I say what's going to happen is that if this guy gets convicted, his attorney is going to file an appeal saying, well, the problem was she shouldn't have been able to show what's left of her legs, you know what I mean? Because it biased,
it biased the jury.
It biased the jury. And I'm going, dude, I get that attorneys get paid to, be effective counsel for their clients, but there's got to be a point where you have to say, okay, we've lost this case. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do understand.
There's nothing. Okay, yesterday I'm driving around, and I'm hitting buttons on my radio like I do all the time. And I hit the 93.3 button, and Peggy Hubbard had just started her show. Now, I don't know if this was planned. It didn't sound like it was planned. Peggy Hubbard says, I think we have a call. Let's go to the phones. Okay, so it wasn't like she was saying, hey, we've got a special guest like I do. She just, It sounded like she randomly took a phone call from a listener, and it was Jane Puszcar. Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So now here's the question I have for you. Jane Puszcar came on and had an agenda, and she was talking about, and quite honestly, I didn't know this crazy story, about the school bus driver who allegedly, I think he's been arrested for all sorts of crazy, weird sex crimes or something like that. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know the story, no. Is it in Francis Howell?
Oh, yeah, Francis Howell. Okay.
Okay.
So she's coming on and giving the Frances Howell's side, and she identifies herself as, she says she's a director. Are the people on the...
Yeah, they're all called directors.
Okay, they're called directors. Okay, so she identifies herself as a director of the Frances Howell School District, and she's giving this report on the bus driver and how he was he doesn't work for the district anymore. And I'm thinking to myself, now hold on a minute now. Is that her job? Isn't that like you're the PR dude? Isn't that the official spokesperson for the school district who should be making those kind of calls?
Making what you mean? Making the call to somebody like a Peggy Hubbard?
Well, she's essentially becoming a conduit. She's essentially becoming an official conduit by saying, "I'm a director for the Frances Howell School."
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, but you know what? I think the point of having the school board, Brad, is that they act independently of the district administration. They are not the district administration. They are not the superintendent. They're a check on the superintendent and a check on the folks who work for the administration. So I think the idea is that you could have however many members of any given school board out there talking to local media and saying what's good, what's bad. They're political people, Brad.
Okay, so what she did, as far as you're concerned, I mean, you're not an official person for Frances Howell, but I'm asking because once again, John used to be a comms person from Monsanto/Bayer, and this is what he did. I mean, to the point where if something came out and that John Combest would be the guy who would be taking phone calls from reporters and sending out emails and things
usually
like that.
The bad news, Brad, for the first several years. Yeah, usually the bad news.
Right. Okay. So she goes on to talk about this, and I'm thinking to myself, I didn't know anything about this. And Peggy Hubbard started asking her questions. Well, how come this hasn't been much in the media and blah, 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 blah. And they're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And Peggy keeps asking her questions. And Jane's not necessarily answering the questions. I'm thinking, so then the interesting thing goes into, then they go into the election where Jane Puszcar is beating up on Peggy Hubbard because she didn't endorse any of the super duper.
Now, Peggy Hubbard lives in Illinois, right?
I don't know where she lives.
I mean, she ran for office in Illinois.
Well, she identifies, and during the conversation, she identifies herself as a former police officer. Did you know that about her?
I thought she was in the military, but yeah.
She claims she's a former police officer, and her husband is still a current police officer. So that's how she identified herself. Okay, so Jane Puszcar is beating up on her because of the fact that she didn't endorse somebody from the Frances Howell School District. And I'm thinking to myself, no, see here. Do you have your butthurt counter out yet? Okay.
I'm ready.
Okay, these people. I sound like I shouldn't say these people, but these folks on all these school boards all over the St. Louis area who thought they were going to have a cakewalk for being, we're conservatives, we're going to rule the school boards, and not one of them got elected anywhere, right?
Yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying, Brad. Now, this certainly isn't anything about negative about Peggy Hubbard. But if Mark Cox, who has a really strong following here, if his slate of candidates lost, does Jane, and again, I didn't hear Jane's interview, but does Jane Puszcar feel like Peggy Hubbard would be like a Peggy Hubbard endorsement would have done something in that race? To me, it sounds like, and again, I don't know these folks involved, Brad, but to me, it sounds like one side has a whole lot of anger and it has to go somewhere. So then you start pointing fingers at each other. It's like that Spider-Man gif where the real Spider-Man's pointing at the fake Spider-Man. Well, it's like they're going to be pointing fingers at each other because the anger has to go somewhere.
Well, to take this one step further, and matter of fact, in full disclosure here, I talked to him just Monday night. Joe Brazel, who is the county. He was involved with this situation, which got a lot of press, where him and Kurt Barr had a little tete-a-tete on the phone, I believe it was. And do you know what was behind that?
No.
Joe Brazel was upset because, and this is what I've read, I didn't talk to Joe personally about this, I talked to him about something else because I was at the county council meeting on Monday night. Joe Brazel was upset because the conservative school board members were all losing.
Oh, yeah. That was the text message he sent to Mark Parkinson.
Right, because of the fact that he thought there was phony baloney stuff.
Something nefarious. Right. And he said you guys are all going to get fired.
Right, because how in the world could the conservatives be losing? Okay, see, so once again, I say to myself, guys, And once again, you got Mark Cox behind you, and I'll say it right now. I have the utmost respect for Mark Cox. Now, here's the interesting thing. I think Mark Cox is distancing himself from me because of the fact that I listen to him on the radio before I go on our station. I listen to him, and I listen to what the topics he talks about. And a lot of times I would send him, text, hey, and sometimes I would give him clarification on things. I'm the nerd. I know stuff that other people don't know, and sometimes.
But he wouldn't mention you by name.
Well, he used to. He used to mention my name. He used to say Brad Hildebrand, and then he said my friend Brad. Now he just ignores me. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, what did I do to Mark Cox? And I think I'm going to go out and if Camelia's listening, maybe she'll rein me in on this. But I'm saying that there's a certain mentality that some of the very conservative people have that they're like, well, we've turned things around. We're going to rule the world because we're conservatives and people think everything about us. And I say, no, most people don't give a poop about what you do. Matter of fact, the thing that I look on this is that, and once again, I'm going to get myself in trouble when I say this, but when I listen to 93.3, when I listen to Tracy's station, I think it borders on Crazyville, okay? And once again, I'm thinking to myself, okay, on my radio station, could I be successful with this if I started coming on and saying really bizarre, weird stuff, like saying, I think that Governor Parson is a terrible person because he's got a tattoo for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think that if
which is true. I mean, that is kind of a negative thing, right?
And look what he did. He let Coach Reed's son off the hook. He let him out of jail, and I think Mike Parsons should be thrown in jail.
Yeah, and what you're saying is that if you went out and said a lot of crazy things.
Right, and the whole thing is, I listened to their station for probably an hour. I'm driving around doing some things, and I probably heard the word rhino, 24 times, and on their station. Matter of fact, I'm thinking to myself, and they actually have an advertiser saying, I advertise on 93.3 because it's not Rhino Radio. And I'm going
it does. You do a good voice like that, Brad. That might actually be you.
Well, I'm to the point where I'm going like, okay, here we go again. This is the problem with the Republicans, okay? The Democrats are Democrats. If you're AOC and you're way, way, way out in the ionosphere as far as where she's at, and then you've got another Democrat on the other side of the Democratic fence, they vote together. Get what I'm saying?
I do.
They vote together as a block. You got wacko AOC on one side, and you got Mr. Conservative Democrat on the other side, but yet when they vote together. It's like the stuff that's going on with the crap with how many, we had McCarthy they threw out. Now they want to throw out Johnson.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, whatever. And once again, it's the thing where you're not, like the deal with Tracy. You're not conservative enough. Well, that's sort of like saying I'm going to get myself in trouble for this. It's like saying what they say about like Condoleezza Rice. She's not black enough. You know what I mean? They say,
I do.
They say, and to the point where, like the interesting story I read recently that talked about the fashion magazines, and when Michelle Obama was on the cover of Elle, I don't know how many times, and the cover of this magazine, that magazine, all these women's fashion magazines. Trump's wife, how many times was she on the cover of fashion magazines? 0. And the interesting thing about it is, what did she used to do? She was a fashion model. So wouldn't you think that if you have a fashion model as the first lady, you'd have her splashed on every single magazine in town, fashion magazine? No, because why? Because the magazines are run by liberal Democrats. See, this
maybe rhinos. Now, Brad, let's get back to the local thing real quick. We're wrapping up the last 4 minutes of our 40 minutes of therapy session here. Don't you think that the Francis Howell election, instead of blaming Peggy Hubbard, don't you think it's mostly because they didn't have enough yard signs?
John,
like I drove around, if I'm in St. Peter's and I'm in St. Charles, and I think if only Kuhn and Young had more yard signs, they could have made up several thousand votes right there, Brad.
Boy.
And what they should have done is they should have advertised on 97.1 and gotten more yard signs. Is that what I'm hearing you say, Brad?
They did advertise on 97.1. Matter of fact,
I don't think we've talked about that before. No, we did. We did cover that.
Yeah,
we did.
Matter of fact, they both spent four figures on 97.1. Okay, so because once again I looked it up the other day, and once again they were there. You can go look at it. Go into FCC public inspection file, Google that term, and go into in the call letters for 97.1 or KFTK. Go into the website. You can see all the people that bought advertising. And once again, I'm not, and I know these people at 97.1. I know Becky Damian, who's the general manager there. I don't know her well. It's sort of weird because she's the daughter of one of my clients, which is sort of interesting. Guys that run the Upkeep company that do home repair and Mr. Fix-It and stuff like that. And I've dealt with her professionally on several occasions, and she couldn't be a nicer, more professional
I bet, Brad.
person.
And boy, have we given folks in Missouri politics who come here for a laugh and who come here for politics, we have given them an education today, again, about the radio industry, haven't we, Brad? And we were constructive in segment B because we talked a little bit about how folks can work radio into their media mix. Brad, I forgot. How can people contact you? I don't remember.
Well, let me just say this. I'm going to mean this in all sincerity. Radio does not have to be an
ancient Chinese secret.
I'm sorry, John.
It doesn't have to be.
And radio doesn't.
When you have a guide and an interpreter like Brad Hildebrand, and folks can reach you how, Brad?
And radio doesn't have to be.
We are National Public Radio, NPR, where the news is what we say is the news.
You don't have.
That line is still so good. Where the news is what we say is the news.
John, you know what? There are days when I get super depressed about stuff that's going on, and what always brings me out is I go in the studio and I do goofy stuff, and that's one of my
they're so good. The songs this week are so good, Brad. Your output, in pro wrestling they'd call that a work rate. Like your work rate of producing just hit after hit. You're the P. Diddy if P. Diddy didn't do butt stuff with guys.
Apparently it was a popular decision.
It was a very popular decision, Brad.
You shall feel the wrath of Hulkamania.
I'm sorry, John.
And these songs are available if folks go to YouTube, and it's bjshow.co on YouTube. Look for it.
Yeah. Okay, Brad, you can reach me at 314-280-8880. John, am I in trouble? I mean, are you embarrassed by what we did today?
No, not at all. You know what? And I think next week as we go into it, I think we did a great job this week doing a lot of insider radio talk and talking about the radio industry. And I think we can return next week to doing kind of the usual stuff we do. And the folks that the reason why folks listen to us. And I thought today segment B especially was really good as we chop it up. It's a good primer on how it was a constructive segment on how folks can work radio in, Brad.
And we pulled away the curtain, and we showed you what's behind the curtain, which is not an
ancient Chinese secret.
I'm sorry, John.
We'll see you guys on Monday.
John just did his political, his PR thing where he's essentially glossing over the fact that I took the show off the rails today, right?
No, hey, Brad, I do that way more often than you do. Lord knows.
Okay.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?